Lauren and Tony have been married for 36 years and are the parents to 9 children. It is with great honor that I introduce you tonight to Lauren Dungy.
Thank you so much, Yoshida, for that warm and welcoming introduction. It is a pleasure to be here this evening and to celebrate with Guiding Star Tampa and recognize all the wonderful things that this awesome ministry is doing. Now, I have to tell you that I'm really glad that I was able to make it here tonight because lately, Tony and I have been having some challenges. I'm going to be transparent with you. Tony had an engagement tonight as well, and that can be a bit of a problem for our family because normally one of us has to stay home to be with the kids. And it's just been so difficult for us to get babysitters. Well, actually, it's not difficult to get one. It's just hard to get them to come back. And we're puzzled. We really don't understand why. I know we have 7 children still at home, 2 teenagers, and 5 kids under the age of 12. And when our teenagers aren't around and they're not available to help keep things under control, sometimes there can be little challenges for the babysitter. Like when an arena football game suddenly breaks out in the living room. All we ask is that they don't let the kids break the furniture up, and they treat the occasional bloody noses and the black eyes. But they're really good kids, I tell you. So it's just puzzling. It's hard for us to understand why many of these sitters, when we call them back, they always have something else to do, and they're not available. But fortunately, we were able to find a sitter tonight, a friend of mine that we met a few weeks ago. He's a sergeant at MacDill, and he's going to be just perfect. So I am thrilled to be here tonight with you. When Guiding Star Tampa asked that I could come and speak at this event, I got really excited because, you see, we share the same vision. They serve women, but the true recipients of their efforts are children. And children are my passion. God helped me develop that passion over the course of my lifetime, and I'd like to share some of the highlights of my journey with you. I grew up in a small suburban town outside of Pittsburgh, PA, to what I'd like to refer to as an outgoing, gregarious, loving, loud Christian family. So growing up with my 4 siblings, we were also blessed to witness firsthand that our parents' love, it didn't have to be limited exclusively to their 5 biological children. And we saw what a difference that love could make in the life of a child. You know, I was really proud of the rich, beautiful legacy of adoption in my family. My grandparents, they adopted 3 children and showered them with love and affection. My parents took over 70 foster children in our home and loved and nurtured on them. And eventually, when they were well into their 60s, they went on to adopt 2 beautiful children. So I'm glad that I was able to see the example up close because God orchestrated and He set the blueprint for Tony and me to follow in our family years later. Well, after graduating from college, I accepted a teaching position at an elementary school. And while I was happy with my life, I had a desire in my spirit to meet Mr. Right. And my future spouse had to be a Christian and love the Lord and serve Him faithfully. Now, I didn't have any objection to him being tall, dark, and handsome. And wouldn't you know, God would use a miraculous circumstance to bring my future husband and me together. Tony was invited to speak at a father-son breakfast at our church. And my pastor was so impressed by his heart and his love for the Lord, he ended up playing matchmaker and introducing us together. And just 10 months later, this hunk of a man and I were married. And as we begin to think about life as a couple and to talk about what the future might hold, I envisioned having a large family. I love Psalm 127. It says, "Children, they're a reward from the Lord, and blessed is the person whose quiver is full." Now, Tony, on the other hand, came from a family of 4. He thought that was a big family. So we kind of entered into the marriage with a slightly different perspective. But the Bible does say when a man and a woman marry, the two become one flesh. So I was praying that I would eventually get him to see things from my viewpoint, because I was anxious to fill up our house with lots of laughter and little ones. And soon God did answer our prayers. He blessed us with a baby girl. She was beautiful, and we just doted over her, and she quickly became a daddy's girl. And then 2 years later, our handsome son Jamie was born. And I was enjoying life. In fact, I was loving it. Being a coach's wife and supporting Tony in his profession, I was so proud of his accomplishments. But as is often the case, God had different plans. Tony's job with the Steelers was suddenly terminated, and we were suddenly uprooted and off to Kansas City. And that would begin my excursion into the real life of an NFL wife. Living in a different city, making new friends, finding new schools, and a church for the family. It really was quite an experience. And you never know exactly how long that you're going to be in one place. And I also learned something. I learned quickly what the NFL really stands for. You think that it stands for the National Football League, but it's actually not for long. Well, Tony and I adored our 2 children, but we did desire more kids. And finally, after 5 years of fervently praying, God gave us another son, Eric. And he was born just days before we went to Minnesota, where Tony took a job with the Vikings. And I like to say that it's a good thing that I had Eric to keep me busy and to dote over, because weather in Minnesota was a challenge. The summers were splendid. They were just beautiful, endless days of sun shining and plenty of parks and gorgeous campgrounds to explore. But the winters was another story. They were long, they were harsh. Cabin fever quickly set in. And I just could not get excited about going to the winter carnival, sampling funnel cakes and corn dogs when it was 15 below zero. And ice fishing, really? I never figured that out, what the attraction was to it. So I decided I need to join some Bible studies and fellowship with other believers while Tony worked long, hard hours with the team. But I will be honest with you, it seemed as if I was constantly asking Tony, "Honey, when do you think we're going to leave? When are we going to make our next move? Is there any possibility this could be our last winter in Minnesota?" And every time that I would inquire, he would remind me in that calm, patient voice of his that the next step up was a head coaching job, and that I needed to be patient. I needed to exercise patience. So the next 4 years, I patiently froze until Tony finally received the call that we were all waiting for. In 1996, that was a glorious year. Tony was named head coach at the Tampa Bay Bucks. Yes. I was celebrating right with you. We bid farewell to the frozen tundra and hello to the sandy beaches. But that year was also special because Tony celebrated the big 4-0. And once he turned 40, he assumed we were done. We were finished having children. 3 was plenty. But I was still looking for that house full of babies, bottles, and bassinets. Tony was understandably busy. He was busy focusing on rebuilding the team, and to the delight of the fans, he was breaking the Doug Williams curse of the creamsicle. And you more seasoned fans know what I'm referring to. So we spent the next 4 years getting acclimated, putting down roots. Our 2 oldest were now teenagers, and Eric was a junior ball boy. Then the Lord stepped in, and he did something that would change our lives drastically. In 1999, right after a devastating championship loss to the Rams, one of Tony's assistant coaches approached Tony with an unusual request. Coach Joe was a bachelor, but he always desired kids, and he had recently met with an adoption agency and was in line to get a baby boy. However, Joe needed some flexibility, some special accommodations with his schedule to welcome his new baby. Tony was more than happy. He was gracious to assist him. So we were really thrilled with Coach Joe and just excited about what he was going to do. And then the Lord began to speak to us. He began to speak to our family as well. If Coach Joe could adopt as a single father, then why couldn't we? So Tony and I prayed about it, and in early 2000, we contacted a local agency, Heart of Adoptions, to further investigate. And there were many reasons why we desired to adopt, but one in particular resonated with us. Tony and I have always identified ourselves to be pro-life. In fact, I've done a lot of volunteering in the Tampa area with crisis pregnancy centers. And as Christians who believe in the Bible and believe the Bible 100%, this means that we believe and we claim the words of Psalm 139, which states, "For it was you who created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be." So if this is true, then we believe God knows all these babies as they're developing, and He has a plan for each and every one of them. Then the question became, how do we act on that belief? Because the same Bible in James 2 says, faith without acting on it is worthless. It's dead. So all our faith, all the beliefs, all our good-heartedness wasn't enough if we weren't going to do something about it. So it's great to say you're pro-life, that we believe in the sanctity of life, but if a woman decides against having an abortion, then were we prepared to do something about it? So in August of 2000, we adopted beautiful, precious, one-day-old Jordan. And I never tire of sharing his amazing story because it's truly a testimony of God's goodness. So allow me to share his story with you. Our Heavenly Father did know Jordan as He was forming him and putting him together. And we truly believe that He placed Jordan with the perfect family because you see, God, for some reason, put Jordan together with one tiny gene missing. And it was a critical one. It was a gene that allows your pain sensors in the nerve endings to fire correctly and send the proper signals to your brain. So shortly after birth, Jordan was diagnosed with SIPA. And SIPA is a very rare neurological condition. So it was evident that God bringing Jordan to us wasn't a coincidence. He was going to need special attention, lots of unconditional love. And our family could provide many of the things that he would need to flourish, to survive, and to grow. While Jordan has had his share of challenges with his condition, he has an extremely high tolerance to pain, which isn't good. He can injure himself severely and not feel it, and he's done this on numerous occasions. Jordan is susceptible to unpredictable occurrences of high fevers. His temperature can be normal 1 minute and then just minutes later spike to a dangerously high level. And I can't tell you how the number of times that we've had to rush into the hospital due to these fevers. He also has soft, brittle bones, which have led to numerous sprains and fractures. Jordan has undergone over 75 surgeries and procedures, and he spent most of his life in a wheelchair or using braces. So caring for Jordan as I share his story and his health issues may seem overwhelming, they may seem unbearable, but it's not. He's in great spirits, he's thriving, he's doing well in spite of his obstacles. When we first had him diagnosed at Johns Hopkins, the neurologist said that due to the numerous issues associated with this rare condition and the need for almost constant treatment and care, that sadly, most children don't even make it past 8 years of age and they succumb to this illness. They pass away. On August 12th, Jordan will celebrate his 18th birthday. Yes. Amen. His story is definitely a testimony to the power of prayer and God's mighty hand at work. You know, and it's interesting, when we adopted Jordan, we were informed that there was actually a shortage of African American adoptive parents. And they told us that if we wanted to adopt an African American or a biracial baby, we wouldn't have to wait long. And they were right, they were correct, because just 6 months later, we brought home our beautiful baby girl, Jade. And Jade is here today. And while we were sure that it was God's hand with Jordan, one event would soon make it just crystal clear to us with Jade as well. Jade was born on Friday, September 7th, 2001. We were away at a game that weekend, so Tony and I had to wait until Monday to meet our precious baby Jade. When we arrived home, we were telling ourselves how blessed we were, how thrilled we were to have another child. We also talked about the fact that as parents, we would nurture her, we would protect her, we would do everything to keep her secure and loved and safe. Well, the next day was September 11th, 9/11. And that day definitely reminded us that we could not protect Jade all by ourselves. As we watched the terrorist acts unfold on TV, we knew the protection and the guidance of our Heavenly Father was what we needed watching over us. And as David said in 2 Samuel 22, "My God is my rock, in whom I find protection. He is my shield and my place of safety." We needed God to protect and provide for all of us. So it was an awesome lesson to experience. Well, I was having a ball with our little princess. After 3 boys in a row, I love being in the baby department, just spending hours looking for sweet little outfits for Jade. Every day was a fashion show for her. And as I reflect back on that time, I'm sure Tony was doing his own thinking. He was thinking, I love my family, God is good, it's an honor to be a parent. But Jade, she's the perfect place to stop with our growing family. And just to be sure that there were no new surprises in our life, Tony and I laugh. He went on to do something. He launched a preemptive strike. He accepted the head coaching job with the Colts, moved the family to Indianapolis, and moved me as far away from Heart of Adoptions as he was able to. And Tony enjoyed the most successful portion of his career. In 2006, he took the Colts to the Super Bowl, and they won. Yes. But 2006 was also to be a memorable year for our family. While attending a playoff football game at our son Eric's high school, who would we end up sitting next to but an adoption attorney? And I say, God must have surely orchestrated that seating arrangement, because the attorney just happened to know of a placement that we might be interested in. So just before the Colts headed off to minicamp, Jordan and Jade and I were visiting my family in Pittsburgh when the attorney notified us. Our newborn baby boy was available in an Indianapolis hospital and ready to meet his new family. Well, unfortunately for me, I was out of town, so Tony and Eric were the only ones there to welcome the new baby and bring him to Pittsburgh so they could meet his extended family. Now, I have to admit, I was jealous. I was jealous that Tony was going to meet our baby before anyone else in the family. I wanted to be the first one to scoop our baby up into my arms and start that bonding process. But I also have to tell you a little secret. While I was nursing jealousy pangs, Tony was praying about his own issues. He had some serious concerns, thinking about that car ride that he was going to have to take to Pittsburgh with the new baby. What if the baby cries the entire trip? What if his diaper needs to be changed? What if he's thirsty? What if he gets bored and tries to crawl out of the car? He was distraught, and the endless possibilities just kept crossing his mind. But if you ask Tony today about that story, he'll nonchalantly tell you that he and Eric had everything under control. He'll tell you that Justin was the most well-behaved baby. It was a peaceful car ride. It was uneventful. And the guys, they developed some amazing bonding time while traveling across I-70. It's a story we still laugh about. Well, I know at this time, Tony was thinking, surely the storybook was complete. I mean, after all, a fourth son, a Super Bowl ring, and a Ford F-150. I mean, what more could a man ask for? And honestly, Justin was adorable. He was delightful. He had a head full of curls, but he was baby number 6. And Tony and I agreed that's not the biblical number of completion. So we could not stop there. Our adoption journey continued. By 2009, we had moved back to Tampa. Tony, by that time, had retired from coaching and was now working as a sports analyst for NBC. Jordan and Jade were in high school. It just seemed that Justin was at home alone a lot, by himself during the day. He seemed lonely and in need of a playmate. I told Tony I didn't want him to grow up as an only child. And he said, I don't get the only child thing, but shortly after that, we adopted handsome, precious Jason. So we now had 7 children, but we still weren't quite finished. As Tony and I became involved with several family care agencies, we attended conferences and galas and fundraisers, and we were constantly reminded of the shortage of foster and adoptive parents. And we knew there were so many babies just sitting in foster care, waiting for a permanent, forever home. And these disturbing truths, they tugged at our hearts. The truth is, we were busy. Along with raising a growing family, we were also volunteering and mentoring and spending many hours in the community. And our calendars, they were full. So how could we possibly open our home, and adopt more babies. But we also know that in Luke 18:27, Jesus said, "What is impossible for people is possible with God." And wouldn't you know it, at a Plant high school football game, who would we run into at the concession stand but the lady from the Heart of Adoptions? We hadn't spoken in quite some time, but she had a unique situation to share with us. And by now, you can guess what happened next. Yes, in January of 2012, we welcomed Jalen Anthony Dungy. Well, once we got past 7, Tony said, "Honey, we might as well shoot for a football team." In 2013, we brought home another baby, little sweet Jaden. And then 2 years later, sweet little Jayla. And by the way, there's no confusion with all the J names: Jordan, Jade, Justin, Jalen, Jada. I don't know what I was thinking, but we love our kids. But as I reflect back on my parents' and grandparents' lives and their legacy, it's truly a blessing that both Tony and I share the same passion and heart for adoption and orphan care, and we're obediently doing kingdom building for His glory and honor. And earlier in my talk, I mentioned Psalm 139 and James 2. And as Christians, we can't ignore those powerful scriptures. The family structure in our country is disintegrating, and it's our children, sadly, that are suffering the most. The statistics on children who are being born and raised every year into single-parent home, they are disturbing. But even more disturbing is the fact that there will be thousands of babies who won't be born at all. Did you know that last year there were over 5,000 abortions performed in Hillsborough County alone? Now that's a lot of lives. And if we're going to truly be pro-life and try to encourage some of these women who don't have the ability or the means to take care of these babies, if we're going to encourage them to choose life, then we have to be willing to step up and provide loving homes for these babies. Tony and I have often been asked, how many children does God desire for us to have? And our answer is, as many as we can put God's divine imprint on. While Tony and I have a great desire to adopt and parent babies, I realize that adoption isn't for everyone, and it does take a special home. But there are plenty of ways that you can support the women of our community and help these unborn children. First of all, you can pray. James 5:16 says, "The earnest prayer of a righteous person has great power and produces wonderful results." So we can pray. We can pray for our president and our government officials that they will work to protect the rights of unborn babies. And we can pray for the women who are making the difficult decision of what to do with an unplanned pregnancy. Pray that they'll choose life. And you can contribute. You can help by supporting not only Guiding Star Tampa, but other organizations in the area. Guiding Star Tampa, as you heard earlier, it's a tremendous ministry, and it provides some amazing services. They educate and empower women and help them get the proper OBGYN care, even those women who may not have the health insurance that they need. So these services empower these ladies to provide for their lives and the lives of an unborn child. And I love that they are Christian-based services, providing assistance and support for the body, the mind, and the spirit. In Matthew chapter 26, Jesus told a story commending the people for looking after him and coming to his aid. And the people, they responded, "Lord, when did we help out?" And Jesus powerfully replied, When you did it for the one of the least of these in my kingdom, you did it for me. And often in our society, some of these needy women and unborn children are considered the least of these, but certainly never in the eyes of God. He will definitely reward us for our care and our compassion for others. And Tony and I always are hopeful that the story of our journey will inspire and encourage others, and that's one reason why we like to share about our adoptions. Last year, I was approached by a lady who had seen our family at church on several occasions. She told me that she and her husband had been considering adoption, and they felt God tugging at their hearts, but they just weren't sure, and they had a number of questions. But after observing us at church with our kids, they thought, maybe we can do this. And so we decided to get together and talk and explore adoption. We had several conversations with her, and we assured her that they wouldn't face anything that the Lord wouldn't be able to guide them through. So they applied for a placement, and then they waited patiently. And when they got the call, it wasn't a newborn baby as they expected. The agency was looking for a forever home for siblings, 3 boys, ages 2, 4, and 6. So even though it wasn't what they had planned, they felt it was God's glorious design to adopt these siblings and help build the kingdom. So tonight, as you consider ways that you can help support Guiding Star Tampa, just know that when you choose to get involved, not only are you investigating and you're investing in our community, you're encouraging others to do the same. And when we do that, everyone benefits. And that's what this evening is all about, coming together and looking for ways that we can empower and support women in Tampa and to help strengthen our beautiful families. Thank you very much.